A lesson in history. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the graduating class at the Interstellar Defense Academy, her weathered hands resting on the ancient wooden podium, one of the few Earth relics still in use. The auditorium held 500 of humanity's brightest military minds, along with 24 alien observers from various allied species. The holographic display behind her showed the image of a simple bronze sword. Before we discuss modern defense systems, she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast space, we need to understand why humanity holds a unique position in galactic warfare. This sword represents something that sets us apart from every other spacefaring race we've encountered. A Centaurian student raised their crystalline appendage. Admiral, forgive my interruption, but how does an obsolete weapon relate to our current strategic position? Chen smiled, the kind of smile that had made hardened generals nervous for decades. Because, Delegate Taris, while every species in the known galaxy developed weapons as tools of war, humans were the only ones who turned warfare itself into an art form. The hologram shifted, cycling through thousands of human weapons across history: spears, bows, catapults, muskets, tanks, railguns, and finally, their modern quantum disruptors. Other species developed weapons to survive. We developed them because we couldn't stop asking what if. A murmur rippled through the alien observers. Chen continued, her dark eyes scanning the audience. In 2157, when the Drachnid fleet first approached Earth, they brought with them what they considered the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Energy shields that could deflect any projectile, plasma cannons that could melt through meters of steel. She paused, letting the tension build. They never expected us to beat them with what they considered construction equipment, because while they saw a mining laser as a tool for cutting rock, some creative soul in the Australian Defence Force wondered what would happen if you reflected it through a series of orbital mirrors. The hologram showed the famous Battle of Luna, where humanity's first major victory against an alien force had been achieved not through superior firepower, but through what the Alliance Council later termed criminally creative applications of civilian technology. That victory taught us something crucial, Chen continued, pacing slowly across the stage. Our greatest strength isn't our technology, our numbers, or even our determination. It's our ability to look at any situation and ask not just how do we win, but how many different ways can we win? A human cadet raised his hand. Admiral, is that why the Galactic Council required us to submit detailed explanations of all our military equipment? Chen's laugh echoed through the hall. Cadet, they required those explanations because in the Proxima Centauri campaign, we turned a terraforming atmosphere processor into what they now refer to as the planet-sized shotgun. They wanted to make sure we weren't planning to weaponize any other civilian infrastructure. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. An Arcturus representative, their bioluminescent patterns showing signs of distress, spoke up. But surely there are limits to what can be repurposed for combat. That's the fascinating thing about humans, Chen replied, bringing up a new hologram, this one showing a simple coffee maker. We once won a skirmish against a Drachnid scout fleet by modifying the station's coffee makers to spray superheated plasma instead of espresso. The enemy commander surrendered because, in his words, any species that can turn a beverage dispenser into a weapon is too unpredictable to fight. The Admiral's expression grew serious. This is why you're all here today. Not just to learn about weapon systems or battle tactics, but to understand why humanity's approach to warfare terrifies our enemies and worries our allies. We don't just think outside the box, we take the box apart, rebuild it into something else, and then use it in ways its original designers never imagined possible. She gestured to the diverse group of students before her. Each of your species brings unique strengths to the Alliance. The Centaurian's unmatched strategic calculation, the Arcturus' innate understanding of energy manipulation, the Regellian's mastery of biotechnology. But humanity, we bring chaos theory to life, with a wild card that turns careful military doctrine into abstract art. The hologram shifted one final time, showing the current galactic map with its complex web of alliances and neutral zones. Tomorrow, we'll begin your actual tactical training. But remember this: the reason humanity has never lost a defensive war isn't because we're stronger, smarter, or better equipped than our opponents. It's because we're the only species crazy enough to look at a coffee maker and see a plasma gun. As the lecture concluded and the students filed out, Admiral Chen overheard a Regelian cadet whisper to their human counterpart, "Is it true what they say? That humans have contingency plans for weaponizing literally everything." The human cadet's response sent a shiver through the alien observers. "Not everything, just anything we can reach. And we're very good at reaching things." Chen gathered her materials, allowing herself a small smile. Let them worry. In a galaxy where humanity's creativity was often the only thing standing between civilization and chaos, a healthy dose of concern about human ingenuity wasn't just understandable, it was tactical doctrine. Little did any of them know how soon they would need to put these lessons to the test. Above their heads, in the vast darkness of space, something was stirring. Something that would challenge even humanity's legendary capacity for creative warfare. But that was tomorrow's problem. For now, Shen had another class to teach: advanced applications of civilian infrastructure in combat scenarios. The coffee maker incident had inspired a whole new field of study: first contact protocol. Lieutenant Maya Patel stood at the observation deck of the exploration vessel Curiosity, watching as strange readings flashed across her holographic display. The ship had been dispatched to investigate an anomaly at the edge of known space, but what they found defied all expectations. "Captain Rodriguez," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "you're going to want to see this." Captain Elena Rodriguez made her way to the observation deck, her boots making soft sounds against the metal floor. The rest of the bridge crew watched in silence as she studied the readings. "Talk to me, Lieutenant. What exactly am I looking at?" Maya pointed to a cluster of energy signatures that pulsed like a heartbeat. "We thought it was just another derelict ship, sir. Standard salvage operation. But these readings, it's like nothing in our database." The massive structure floating before them was neither ship nor station. Its surface shifted and rippled like liquid metal, but the scanners showed it was solid. Strange symbols crawled across its hull, glowing with an inner light that seemed to respond to their presence. "Sir," called out Dr. James Chen, the ship's xenoarchaeologist, "I believe this is a precursor artifact. The symbols match fragments we found on other worlds, but this is the first time we've seen them, active." Rodriguez frowned. "The precursors? The same ones that disappeared 50,000 years ago, leaving nothing but ruins." "The very same," James confirmed, his eyes glued to the readings. "But this isn't a ruin. This is active technology. And if I'm reading these energy signatures correctly, it's waking up." As if on cue, the structure pulsed with brilliant light. The ship's ARIA, spoke up with unusual urgency. "Captain, the artifact is generating a quantum field similar to our communications systems. I believe it's trying to establish contact." Rodriguez straightened her uniform. "First contact protocol, people. This is not a drill. Lieutenant Patel, open all standard greeting frequencies. Dr. Chen, I want everything we know about precursor communication methods. AOEA, begin recording and transmitting data back to Earth Command." The artifact's surface suddenly rippled more violently, and a beam of light shot out, creating a holographic display in the middle of the bridge. The image resolved into a form that made everyone gasp. It appeared humanoid, but composed entirely of shifting geometric patterns. Genetic inheritors detected, the figure spoke, its voice somehow both mechanical and organic. "Initiating emergency protocol Alpha Zero. This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Earth exploration vessel Curiosity. We come in peace and seek to establish diplomatic relations." The figure seemed to study them, its form shifting constantly. "Peace is irrelevant. The harvesters approach. The cycle continues. You have been chosen. Dr. Chen stepped forward, his academic curiosity overcoming his caution. Chosen for what? To defend, to survive, to succeed where we failed. The figure's form became more agitated. We were the first, we created the defenses, but we were too logical, too predictable. The harvesters adapted. We fell. But you are different. Maya's instruments suddenly lit up with warnings. Captain, the artifact is transmitting massive amounts of data directly into our ship's systems. AOIA, firewalls up. Rodriguez commanded, but the A's response was unexpected. Captain, this isn't an attack. It's knowledge. Technical specifications, historical records, weapons designs, but they're unlike anything we've ever seen. The holographic figure continued. Your species possesses what we lacked: chaos potential, unpredictability, creativity. The harvesters cannot adapt to what they cannot predict. Our technology, combined with your nature, may be enough. Enough for what? Rodriguez demanded. What are these harvesters? They consume civilizations, adapt to all defenses, grow stronger with each victory. They defeated us through superior adaptation. But you, the figure, actually seemed to smile. You create weapons from drinking vessels. You turn construction tools into engines of war. You do not think as we thought. This is your advantage. Suddenly, new alarms blared. Maya's hands flew over her controls. Captain, long-range sensors are picking up something massive entering the system. Multiple signatures, unlike anything we've ever encountered. The holographic figure's form began to fade. They approached sooner than calculated. The knowledge is yours now. Use it. Improve it. Change it in ways we never imagined. This is why you were chosen. This is why you will survive. As the figure disappeared, the artifact began to break apart, its fragments dissolving into streams of energy that flowed into the ship's systems. The entire vessel hummed with power as it integrated the ancient technology. LOIA, status report. Rodriguez barked. Captain, our systems are evolving. The precursor data is combining with our technology in ways I can barely comprehend. But the hostile signatures are still approaching. Time to intercept, 6 hours. Rodriguez looked at her crew, seeing the mix of fear and determination on their faces. Dr. Chen, start analyzing that historical data. I want to know everything about these harvesters. Lieutenant Patel, see what our new hybrid systems can do. And someone get Admiral Chen on the quantum comm. Tell her the coffee makers might not be enough this time. As the crew rushed to their stations, Maya caught a glimpse of the approaching signatures on her enhanced display. The shapes were impossible, changing even as she watched, adapting to space itself. But as terrifying as they were, she couldn't help but smile. The precursors had chosen humanity for their unpredictability, their creative chaos. It was time to show these harvesters exactly what human ingenuity could do with advanced alien tech. After all, if they could turn a coffee maker into a weapon, imagine what they could do with actual precursor technology. The battle for survival was about to begin, and humanity's greatest strength, their wonderful, terrible creativity, would be tested like never before. The first wave. The next 6 hours aboard the Curiosity were a blur of activity that would have made any traditional military commander's head spin. Captain Rodriguez had given her crew one simple order: break every rule in the book. Then break the laws of physics. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Raj Patel, no relation to Maya, had 3 different holographic displays floating around him as he interfaced with AOIA. You're telling me these precursor systems can fold space-time like origami? Affirmative, AOIA replied, her voice carrying an unusual note of excitement. But their applications were limited by conventional thinking. Raj's eyes lit up with the kind of gleam that usually preceded either a brilliant breakthrough or a spectacular explosion. What if we don't fold it? What if we crumple it? Chief Engineer, that would violate 17 known laws of physics. Perfect. Ray's fingers flew over the controls. Let's violate 18 just to be thorough. Meanwhile, in the weapons bay, Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Admiral Chen's granddaughter, was having an animated discussion with a piece of mining equipment. Look, I know you were designed to crack asteroids, but what if we reversed the gravitational pulse and added a quantum spin? The mining laser's safety protocols tried to object, but AOIA had already helped bypass them. Lieutenant, the AI chimed in, that modification would technically turn it into a weapon that shoots small holes in reality. Yes, Sarah grinned, and what comes through those holes? Unknown. The mathematical possibilities are infinite. Even better, the harvesters can't adapt to what we don't know either. On the bridge, Maya Patel had turned her navigation console into something that looked more like an abstract art installation. Captain Rodriguez raised an eyebrow as she passed by. Lieutenant, why are there cat videos playing on your tactical display? Because, Captain, Maya replied without looking up. I figured out that the precursor sensor systems respond to pattern recognition. And nothing has more random yet recognizable patterns than cat videos. I've increased our sensor range by 300%. Rodriguez decided not to question it. In the past hour alone, she'd approved the conversion of the ship's recycling system into what the engineering team called a probability cannon, authorized the use of the mess hall's molecular synthesizers to create what Dr. Chen termed quantum-entangled hot sauce, and watched as someone turned the ship's entertainment system into a device that could theoretically make enemy ships experience an existential crisis. Time to contact, she called out. 4 minutes, Captain, Maya responded. The Harvester fleet. It's like nothing we've ever seen. Their ships keep changing form, adapting to space itself. Good thing we're about to show them some changes they couldn't possibly adapt to. All hands, battle stations. The Curiosity's crew scrambled to their positions, though those positions now looked more like a modern art exhibit than a military vessel's combat stations. The first wave of harvester ships appeared on their enhanced displays, crystalline structures that shifted and flowed like liquid geometry. They're scanning us, Maya reported, trying to analyze our capabilities. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Let's give them something to think about. Mr. Potel, initiate Operation Coffee Break. With pleasure, Captain. Ray's fingers danced across his console, crumpling spacetime in 3, 2, 1. The Curiosity's new hybrid systems activated all at once. Reality around the ship didn't so much bend as it did a cartwheel. The harvester ships suddenly found themselves trying to adapt to space that wasn't behaving like space anymore. Sarah, give them a taste of your impossible weapon. Lieutenant Chen fired the modified mining laser. Points of light erupted from the harvester fleet's position, followed by what could only be described as the color of jazz music played backwards. What just happened? Rodriguez demanded. I think, Dr. Chen said slowly, we just made them experience synesthesia on a quantum level. They're trying to adapt, but how do you adapt to seeing the taste of purple? The harvester ship's crystalline forms began shifting more rapidly, attempting to counter these impossible attacks. But every adaptation only gave the human crew more ideas. They're launching some kind of energy weapon, Maya called out. Perfect, Sarah shouted back. Raj, remember that thing we discussed about using the entertainment system? On it. Oh yeah, pipe Earth's entire collection of cat videos through the quantum defense grid. The energy weapon hit their shields, which had been modified to respond with cat memes. Thousands of them, quantum entangled and probability enhanced. The harvester ship that fired the weapon suddenly began displaying pictures of kittens across its crystalline surface. Did we just infect them with cats? Rodriguez asked incredulously. Not exactly, Captain Araya explained. We showed them that reality can be whatever we want it to be. Their adaptive algorithms are trying to make sense of it, but you can't make sense of nonsense that runs on quantum mechanics. The harvester fleet's attacks became more erratic. Every time they adapted to one impossible thing, The humans threw 3 more at them. The recycling system's probability cannon-fired shells that might or might not exist until observed. The quantum-entangled hot sauce somehow made half their fleet taste spicy. And through it all, cat videos continued to corrupt their attempt to understand human warfare. "They're retreating," Maya announced triumphantly. I think we confused them to death." Rodriguez slumped in her chair, watching as the mighty Harvester fleet fled from a single human vessel armed with nothing but modified civilian equipment and a complete disregard for the laws of physics. "Send word to Earth Command," she ordered. Tell them we figured out how to fight the Harvesters, and remind Admiral Chen that she was right. Humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology, it's our ability to use it wrong in exactly the right way." As the crew celebrated their victory, Dr. Chen studied the precursor data with growing excitement. "Captain, this was just the beginning. These Harvesters, they operate on logic, on predictable patterns of adaptation. But humans, we operate on whatever we feel like operating on," Rodriguez finished. "And that's something they can never adapt to." Looking at her crew's impromptu modifications, the coffee maker now somehow involved in navigational calculations, the entertainment system integrated into their weapons, and was that a toaster giving tactical advice? Rodriguez knew that humanity had found its place in the galaxy. They weren't just survivors or warriors. They were the chaos factor that even chaos couldn't predict. Evolution of war. The news of the Curiosity's victory spread through human space like wildfire, but Admiral Chen knew better than to celebrate too early. In her office at Earth Command, she studied the reports with growing concern. "They're learning," she announced to the gathered military leadership. "Each encounter with the Harvesters shows they're adapting not just to our weapons, but to our unpredictability itself." Holoprojections showed battles from across the frontier. The Harvesters had returned in greater numbers, their crystalline ships now incorporating seemingly random elements into their own designs. One footage showed a Harvester vessel firing what appeared to be weaponized memes back at human ships. "They're trying to beat us at our own game," General Santos observed, his weathered face grim. "Using chaos against chaos." "No," Admiral Chen corrected, a slight smile playing at her lips. "They're trying to simulate chaos, but they're still doing it systematically, and that's their weakness." She brought up footage from the Curiosity's battle. "Look here, when we hit them with quantum-entangled cat videos, they tried to respond with precisely calculated randomness. They don't understand that true human chaos isn't random at all, it's intuitive." At that moment, Lieutenant Petal's voice came through the quantum comm. "Admiral, we have a situation at the Proxima Centauri colony. The Harvesters, they're doing something new." The tactical display shifted to show the colony. The sight made even the hardened military leaders gasp. The Harvester ships had merged into a single massive structure that seemed to defy geometry itself. "They're mimicking our disregard for physics," Dr. Chen's voice added, "but they're doing it by brute-forcing mathematical possibilities. It's like they're trying to write poetry by analyzing every possible combination of words." Admiral Chen's smile widened. "And that's exactly why they'll fail. Lieutenant Petal, implement protocol, Jazz." "Jazz protocol?" General Santos asked, confused. "Something my granddaughter came up with. Sarah, would you care to explain?" Lieutenant Sarah Chen's voice came over the comm, filled with barely contained excitement. "The Harvesters operate on patterns, even when trying to be unpredictable. But jazz, real jazz, it's improvisation based on feeling. You can't calculate feeling." The gathered leaders watched as human ships across the Proxima Centauri system began moving in what appeared to be complete chaos. But there was a rhythm to it, an underlying harmony that made sense only to human intuition. "Each ship captain is improvising," Sarah explained, "but they're all feeling the same groove. It's like a battle orchestra, where everyone's playing their own tune that somehow fits together." The Harvester megastructure tried to adapt, its crystalline surface shifting through billions of configurations per second. But every time it thought it had matched the human's pattern, the pattern changed, not randomly, but emotionally. "We're not just fighting with technology anymore," Admiral Chen explained to the astonished leaders. "We're fighting with human nature itself, art, music, intuition, things that can't be reduced to pure logic." On the tactical display, human ships were now executing maneuvers based on classic dance moves. A destroyer spun through space like a breakdancer, its modified weapons leaving trails of quantum disruption that formed abstract patterns. A cruiser squadron moved in perfect harmony, their formations inspired by synchronized swimming. "This is insane," General Santos muttered. "Exactly," Admiral Chen agreed, "and that's why it's working." The Harvester structure's attempts to adapt became increasingly erratic. It tried to match the dance-like movements of the human ships, but its calculations couldn't capture the soul of the performance. It was like watching a computer try to understand why people cry at sunsets. "They've adapted to our weapons," Sarah's voice came through again. "They've adapted to our tactics. But they can't adapt to our humanity because they don't understand what makes us human." The battle reached its crescendo as the human fleet executed what could only be described as a synchronized space ballet. Ships moved in patterns inspired by everything from classical music to street dance, their weapons firing in rhythms that seemed to follow no logic, but felt perfectly right to human observers. The Harvester structure, in its desperate attempt to match this display, began to tear itself apart. Its perfectly calculated chaos couldn't compete with the genuine article. "Admiral," Maya reported, "they're retreating. But this is interesting. Their retreat pattern, it's different this time. More hesitant." Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully. "They're learning, but not in the way they expected to. They're beginning to realize that some things can't be learned through adaptation alone. You can't calculate soul." As the fleet regrouped, Dr. Chen's analysis came through. The precursor data suggests this was their problem too. They tried to fight the Harvesters with pure logic, with perfect strategies, but perfection is predictable. "And humanity," Admiral Chen added, "is anything but perfect. That's our strength." She turned to the still stunned military leadership. "Gentlemen, I suggest we stop trying to develop better weapons. Instead, let's teach our ships to dance." The looks on their faces were priceless, but none could argue with the results. The Harvesters had encountered something they couldn't adapt to, the beautiful, chaotic, emotional mess that was human creativity. As the debriefing concluded, Admiral Chen received one last message from the Curiosity. Captain Rodriguez's voice was filled with amusement. "Admiral, you'll never believe what we did with the ship's karaoke machine." Chen didn't need to hear the rest. She already knew that whatever they'd done, it would be brilliant, impossible, and absolutely human. After all, in a war against perfect adaptation, their greatest weapon was their own beautiful imperfection. "Carry on, Captain," she replied. "Let's show these Harvesters what happens when you try to calculate the incalculable." Breaking point. The observation deck of Earth's orbital defense station Imagination was unusually crowded. Scientists, military officers, and even a few civilian artists had gathered to witness what Dr. James Chen was calling the ultimate expression of human warfare. "The Harvesters have been studying us," he explained, gesturing to the holographic displays showing their recent battles. "They've analyzed our tactics, our technology, even our cat videos, but they're still missing something fundamental." Admiral Chen nodded. "They see the notes, but they can't hear the music." The latest intelligence showed the Harvesters had assembled their largest fleet yet, a vast armada of crystalline vessels that had adapted to incorporate everything they'd learned about human combat tactics. They even broadcast quantum-entangled memes as they approached. But humanity had been preparing too. "Project Symphony is ready," Lieutenant Sarah Chen announced, her hands dancing across the control interface. "All ships are in position." What the Harvesters saw as they approached Earth's defense perimeter defied their considerable capacity for adaptation. The human fleet had arranged itself into what appeared to be a giant musical staff, with ships positioned like notes in a cosmic score. "Begin the performance," Admiral Chen ordered. The first wave of human ships began to move, their patterns following the rhythm of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. But this was no mere formation flying. Each ship's movements generated quantum harmonics that rippled through space-time itself. "We're not just playing music," Dr. Chen explained to the bewildered observers. "We're turning the fabric of space into an instrument." The Harvester fleet attempted to adapt, their ships shifting and reorganizing to match the pattern. But as soon as they did, the human fleet switched to jazz, their movements becoming fluid and improvisational. Space itself seemed to swing to the rhythm. "They can copy our movements," Sarah commented, "but they can't feel the groove." The battle unfolded like a cosmic dance-off. The Harvesters would analyze and replicate one style of movement, only to find the humans had switched to something entirely different. Classical gave way to rock, which morphed into hip-hop, then into forms of expression that had no names but made perfect sense to human intuition. "Look at their response patterns," Maya Patel noted from her station. "They're trying to predict what style we'll use next by analyzing human culture. But they're working from a database, while we're working from our souls." The Harvester fleet's attempts to adapt became increasingly desperate. Their ships began to display signs of what could only be described as mechanical confusion. They had all of human culture in their databanks, but they couldn't understand why humans did what they did. "Now," Admiral Chen commanded, "initiate the crescendo." What happened next would be debated in military academies for generations to come. Every human ship began broadcasting something different: music, art, poetry, dance, even cooking recipes. But somehow, impossibly, it all worked together in perfect harmony. "We're not just fighting with weapons anymore," Dr. Chen observed. "We're fighting with everything that makes us human. Our hopes, our dreams, our ability to find beauty in chaos and meaning in madness." The Harvester fleet's perfectly ordered formations began to break down. Their attempts to adapt to human unpredictability had made them vulnerable to something far more potent: human creativity. "They spent all this time learning to expect the unexpected," Sarah said with a grin, "but they never learned to feel it." The breaking point came when Captain Rodriguez, commanding the Curiosity at the heart of the human fleet, transmitted what she called the ultimate weapon: a child's crayon drawing, quantum entangled with a grandmother's lullaby and the feeling of watching a sunset. The Harvester ships closest to the transmission simply stopped. Their crystalline forms froze in configurations that somehow managed to look confused. "What's happening to them?" General Santos demanded. "They're experiencing humanity," Admiral Chen explained softly. "Not as data to be analyzed, but as something to be felt, and they have no defense against that." The battle reached its climax as the human fleet executed what historians would later call the Grand Symphony of Earth, a perfect fusion of art, science, emotion, and motion that turned space itself into a canvas for human expression. The Harvester fleet didn't retreat this time. Instead, it did something unprecedented. It stopped fighting entirely. Their ships hung in space, their ever-shifting forms settling into patterns that almost looked appreciative. "We're receiving a transmission," Maya announced, surprised. "It's different from their usual communications." The message that came through was simple but profound. "We understand now. You are not chaos. You are not order. You are something we cannot adapt to because you are something that cannot be replicated. You are human." Admiral Chen smiled. "And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why humanity wins. Not because we're stronger or smarter, but because we're the only species crazy enough to turn a battle into a concert and make it work." As the Harvester fleet began to withdraw, not in defeat, but in what appeared to be respectful acknowledgement, Dr. Chen made a final entry in his research log. "Today we proved that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology, our strategy, or even our unpredictability. It's our ability to make art out of anything, even war." The observation deck erupted in cheers, But Admiral Chen's attention was drawn to a small detail on one of the displays. The retreating harvester ships had begun to move in patterns that looked almost like dancing. Now that, she mused, is what I call cultural exchange, the bridge between worlds. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, the Curiosity found itself hosting an unprecedented event. Captain Rodriguez stood in the ship's newly redesigned conference room, watching as crystalline forms shifted and flowed around what had once been a simple meeting table. The harvesters had returned, not as conquerors, but as students. Let me see if I understand correctly. The lead harvester entity, which had taken the name Symphony, communicated through a blend of crystalline patterns and quantum harmonics. You defeated us not because you were more advanced, but because you were more human. That's oversimplifying it a bit, Dr. Chen replied, watching in fascination as the harvester's form rippled in what he'd learned to recognize as curiosity. We didn't win because we were human. We won because we embraced everything that being human means, including our contradictions. Admiral Chen, who had insisted on being present for this historic meeting, added, "You tried to adapt to our tactics, our technology, even our apparent chaos. But you couldn't adapt to our ability to be both logical and emotional, ordered and chaotic, scientific and artistic, all at the same time." Symphony's crystalline form shifted into something that almost resembled a human pondering pose. "We have analyzed millions of human cultural artifacts since our retreat. Your species creates art about war, finds beauty in destruction, and turns scientific principles into dance moves. It defies all rational analysis." Lieutenant Sarah Chen, who had been quietly experimenting with the ship's new hybrid human harvester systems, looked up. "Maybe that's because you're still trying to analyze it. Some things aren't meant to be analyzed, they're meant to be experienced." As if to demonstrate, she activated a small device she'd been working on. The room filled with a harmonic resonance that made the harvester's crystalline forms vibrate in sympathy. But instead of data or tactical information, it transmitted pure emotion. The feeling of watching a first snowfall, the joy of a child's laughter, the bittersweetness of a goodbye. The harvester delegates' forms shifted rapidly, trying to process this new kind of information. Symphony's voice held a note of wonder. This is not efficient, not logical, and yet it moves you," Admiral Chen finished. "That's humanity for you. We're terribly inefficient, wildly illogical, and somehow that makes us more than the sum of our parts." Captain Rodriguez pulled up a holographic display showing the modifications they'd made to the Curiosity during the war. "Look at this engine design. By all rational analysis, it shouldn't work. We basically took precursor technology and used it wrong, but with style. And because we didn't know it was impossible, we made it possible." The harvesters studied the display, their forms shifting in what had become their equivalent of head shaking. "You turned theoretical physics into an art form," Symphony observed. "You treated the laws of nature like guidelines rather than rules." "That's just the beginning," Dr. Chen said excitedly. "Since we started collaborating with your people, we've discovered that your adaptive capabilities, combined with our creative intuition, can lead to entirely new forms of both science and art." He demonstrated by activating the ship's new hybrid communication system. Instead of just transmitting data, it conveyed concepts through a combination of quantum mechanics and interpretive dance. The resulting display was both mathematically perfect and aesthetically beautiful. "We're not just teaching you about humanity," Sarah explained. "We're learning how to be more human ourselves. Your presence, your perspective, helps us see our own uniqueness more clearly." Symphony's form crystallized into a pattern that they'd come to recognize as deep thought. "We came to this galaxy as conquerors, seeking to absorb and adapt to all we encountered. But you showed us something we never expected, that there are things in this universe that cannot be conquered or adapted to, only appreciated and learned from." Admiral Chen smiled. "And that's why we're here today, not as victors and vanquished, but as teachers and students, all of us learning from each other." The meeting continued late into the ship's night cycle. The harvesters shared their vast knowledge of cosmic adaptation, while the humans taught them about poetry, music, and the art of making something beautiful out of chaos. Together, they began planning for a future where their combined strengths could create something entirely new. As the session drew to a close, Symphony made an observation that would be recorded in both human and harvester histories. We came seeking to perfect ourselves through adaptation. You taught us that true perfection lies in accepting and celebrating imperfection. Perhaps that is the greatest adaptation of all. Looking around the room at the unlikely gathering, humans and harvesters, soldiers and scientists, artists and engineers, Captain Rodriguez couldn't help but smile. They had started with a war and ended with a cultural exchange program. Somehow, that felt like the most human outcome possible. "So," she asked Symphony, ready to learn about human dance. "I hear crystalline beings make excellent partners for the tango." The resulting attempt to teach a quantum-based crystalline life form to dance the tango would go down in history as either the greatest diplomatic breakthrough or the most entertaining disaster in human history. Probably both, because that too was perfectly human. Legacy of innovation. 1 year after the historic first dance lessons between humans and harvesters, Earth's orbital space had transformed into something that defied traditional description. The massive structure floating above the planet was neither purely human nor harvester in design. It was something entirely new. "Welcome to the Convergence Academy," Admiral Chen announced to the first class of mixed-species students. The auditorium contained humans, harvesters, and representatives from a dozen other galactic civilizations who had been drawn to this unprecedented experiment. The academy itself seemed to shift and flow, its walls morphing between solid architecture and crystalline patterns. Quantum harmonics played through its corridors like background music, carrying both information and emotion. "When we first encountered the harvesters," the Admiral continued, "we thought we were facing an existential threat. Instead, we found a catalyst for the next stage of human evolution, not through biological adaptation, but through the growth of ideas." Symphony, now the lead instructor for harvester-human integration studies, shifted their crystalline form into a lecture-ready configuration. And we, who sought to adapt to all things, learned that some things are not meant to be adapted to, but rather experienced and embraced. The first lesson began with what appeared to be a simple engineering challenge: design a space vessel. But this was the Convergence Academy, where nothing was ever quite that simple. "Your ship must be capable of faster-than-light travel," Captain Rodriguez, now the Academy's Chief of Innovative Technologies, explained. "But it also needs to be able to express emotions through its engine's signature. And yes, that will be on the test." The students, human and alien alike, stared at her in bewilderment. A young harvester named Melody, they had started adopting human names, raised a crystalline appendage. How can an engine express emotions? "Excellent question," Dr. Chen beamed, pulling up a holographic display of the Curiosity's current engine configuration. "Watch this." The ship's power core pulsed with a rhythm that somehow conveyed both mathematical precision and artistic flair. Energy patterns flowed through the systems in ways that made several harvester students vibrate in appreciation, while human students found themselves swaying to an unheard beat. "This is what we call quantum emotional engineering," Sarah Chen explained, now heading the Academy's experimental physics department. "It combines harvester adaptive technology with human intuitive design. The result is technology that doesn't just work, it feels." The Academy's curriculum reflected this fusion of approaches. Students learned advanced physics alongside interpretive dance, studied quantum mechanics through musical composition, and practiced diplomatic relations through shared artistic experiences. "But why?" asked a puzzled alien observer from a highly logical species. "Surely there are more efficient ways to advance technology." Admiral Chen smiled, that knowing smile that had become famous across the galaxy. "Efficiency isn't everything. Sometimes the longest way around is the shortest way home." Humanity didn't become a spacefaring civilization by always taking the most logical path. We got here by dreaming impossible dreams and then being stubborn enough to make them possible. The Academy itself was proof of this philosophy. Its halls contained laboratories where scientists used emotional resonance to enhance quantum calculations, art studios where harvesters learned to express themselves through crystalline sculptures that defied physics, and engineering workshops where students built devices that operated on principles that were half science, half poetry. Today's assignment, Captain Rodriguez announced to her advanced innovative warfare class, is to design a defense system using only musical instruments, quantum entanglement, and at least one bad pun. The Harvester students had long since learned to stop asking why, and instead embrace the human approach of why not. As the year progressed, the results of this unprecedented collaboration began to emerge. Ships that could travel through space using harmonics of joy, communication systems that transmitted feelings as clearly as data, defensive technologies that protected through beauty rather than force. But perhaps the most significant development came from an unexpected quarter. A joint team of human artists and harvester engineers had created something they called the Bridge, a space station that existed simultaneously as a piece of art and a technological marvel. The Bridge represents everything we've learned from each other, Symphony explained during its inauguration. It adapts and changes like a harvester, but it does so with human creativity and emotion. It's not just a structure, it's a statement about what we can achieve when we combine our strengths. Standing on the Bridge's observation deck, watching Earth rotate below while harvester crystalline ships dance through space in patterns that would have been impossible a year ago, Admiral Chen felt a profound sense of satisfaction. "You know what the best part is?" she said to no one in particular. "We're just getting started." Maya Patel, monitoring the Bridge's quantum emotional systems, looked up with a grin. "The harvesters are already asking about human music from the 21st century. Should we introduce them to K-pop?" "One cultural revolution at a time," Rodriguez laughed. "Though I would love to see a crystalline being attempt breakdancing." As if on cue, Symphony began shifting their form in what was unmistakably an attempt at the robot dance, proving that even ancient adaptive alien species could develop a sense of humor. The legacy of the human harvester war wasn't written in victories or defeats, but in the bridges built between different ways of thinking. The Convergence Academy stood as a testament to humanity's greatest strength, not their technology or their warfare, but their ability to turn enemies into students, conflict into collaboration, and impossibilities into new frontiers of discovery. In the end, Admiral Chen wrote in her final report to Earth Command, "We didn't just teach the harvesters about humanity. They helped us become more human than ever. And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all." As the first graduating class prepared to venture out into the galaxy, they carried with them not just diplomas, but a new way of seeing the universe, through eyes that could appreciate both the mathematical precision of a quantum equation and the wild beauty of a child's first painting. The future, it seemed, would be neither purely logical nor purely emotional, but a beautiful dance between the two. And humanity, with their wonderful capacity for embracing contradictions, would lead that dance into whatever impossibilities awaited among the stars.